What's Hawkin? What's Hawkin? It's your boy Tay P, aka Tayasin. We're back for the final installment of our NFL schedule breakdown by team in importance to our champion Seahawks. We've gone through literally every single team in the league except for our own. So, without further ado, we're going to dive in and dissect the Seahawk schedule. Now, before we get started, I already know there are people out there who are like, yo, the schedule came out in May. It's now July. Why are you talking about the schedule? That's old news. Well, first of all, I'm going to need you to relax. Go take a coffee break. Do a lap around the block. Take a walk. Touch some grass. Chill out. Okay. Here at What's Hawking, we go at our own speed. This is our first year doing this, so please forgive me if I might not create the content you think that I should create at the time you think I should create it. Okay, that's first of all. But more importantly, schedule content never gets old until the schedule is old. The Seahawks schedule is still new, still relevant because they have not played a single game. And guess what? Even during the season, you know what a lot of content is centered around? The schedule, upcoming games, games to watch. Based on how the season is going thus far, we might point out key matchups throughout the season, not just for our Seahawks, but for every team in the league. So the schedule will always be relevant. Secondly, I did some intensive research. I've talked about this before. I'm a numbers nerd. I'm a nerd in general. So I don't take the schedule release and just look at my team. I looked at every single team's schedule, broke down who had primetime games, when the bye weeks were, who the key matchups were. That's how we came up with this episode installment to understand which team schedules impacted the Seahawks more or less. So, you're welcome that I did all this hard work using no AI to do it. Only intelligence was actual intelligence. That's the AI I used, actual intelligence. I used my own brain to figure out whose team schedules impact us the most. Well, obviously, our schedule will always have the most impact because we take care of our own business. It doesn't matter what any other team does. If we win every single game in the season, more than likely we're going to be the number one seed, not only in the NFC, but the best team in the league. Um, but we know that more than just our schedule impacts our season. Remember 2 seasons ago, Mike McDonald's first season in the league, everyone remembers we went 10-7. What many people don't remember is that we still had a chance to get into the playoffs at 10-7 based on what other teams were doing. I believe it was San Francisco and Arizona. That game in week 18, depending on the outcome, determined whether or not we were going to the playoffs or not, irregardless of whether or not we beat the Rams in that last regular season game. It ended up coming to pass that no matter what, our fate was already sealed. We were just playing for pride. We still won that game, which is how we got to 10-7. Um, but we still had a chance based on what other teams were doing. So that's why I did this. Okay. I don't believe that our season, this upcoming season, will come to needing someone else to help us get in the postseason, but it impacts seeding. It impacts a lot of things. So that's why we're here. But aside from the teams in our own division, obviously every single team could potentially have an impact. And we discussed this already in the very first episode. There were 8 teams in the league, all in the AFC, um, where they could win every game, lose every game. It had no bearings on the regular season for the Seahawks. Now, why those teams' schedules still matter is because every team, all 32 teams in the league, have a chance to fight for a chance to play for a Super Bowl. So every single AFC team could potentially be a Super Bowl matchup for our defending champion Seahawks if and when we go back to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. So even the Cleveland Browns, who I do not believe have a chance at the Super Bowl, let alone the playoffs. If I am completely wrong about the Browns, it will be nice to have had some sort of recon on the Browns before the Super Bowl. But I digress. So let's get into it regarding the Seahawks. This is going to include some obvious information that everyone knows. Like you could just pull up the schedule and look at it. But it's also going. I'm going to kind of go behind the curtain a little bit in regards to the possible implications of some of the information we do know as it relates to our season. Starting with the fact that we have 7 primetime games. I know that it's a common theme within the Seahawk fan community, within the 12s, that we feel disrespected by and large by the NFL and the NFL community in terms of fandom. No one respects the Seahawks. It feels like a lot of teams and fan bases are ready to move on from the fact that we won the Super Bowl, which would make sense if you're just bitter that your team didn't win. But there's this hovering sense that people want to move on from Super Bowl 60 because it was the Seahawks who won. I don't know that it would necessarily be the same vibe had we lost to the Patriots. But I digress because I can't say we are fully disrespected. We've got 7 primetime games this year against the Patriots, Broncos, Chiefs, Bears, Cowboys, Eagles, and of course the Rams. We have a 3-game homestand throughout the season in week 7 through 9. We have all 3 of those games at home. Cannot stress enough the importance and advantage a team can have not having to pack a bag, not having to travel, getting to stay around friends, family, and having some sense of normalcy while also being able to lock in for football in season. Um, so we have 3 straight home games. It includes a divisional game against the Cardinals. We'll get to that in a second. We have 3 games in this season where we play off of at least 10 days of rest. Weeks 2, 7, and 12. And again, we'll go into more of those matchups as well. And then we have 3 straight games on shortened rest, less than 7 days, right? 1 game per week. You would think you'd have 7 days to recover. We have 3 straight games where we have less than 7 days of rest. So this goes back to why I think that the NFL has something against the Seahawks, because who else in the league has 3 straight games where they're playing off of 6 days of rest? Guess what? I did the research. No one. Week 14, we play the Giants on 6 days rest. Week 15, we play the Eagles, 6 days rest. Week 16, we play the Rams, 6 days of rest on Christmas Day. All right, so let's break down to the season week by week. Starting with week 1, it's a rematch. These are the teams who played football most recently: the Seahawks and the Patriots. We know what happened. We know the score. We don't have to reiterate it. We know who ended up having a parade. We know who ended up having Super Bowl merch, and we know who Super Bowl merch went overseas. But the Patriots come to Lumen Field, so it's a different territory. Just saying, they played us in Lumen Field Junior last year, so you know the original Lumen Field Senior. Um, it's gonna be rocking. I was at that game. Humble brag, I was at the Super Bowl, and it was loud. I obviously first Super Bowl I've ever attended, so I'm just going based off of what I usually hear, which is it's a very neutral fan base because you've got football fans far and wide. Obviously you've got football fans for each of the 2 competing teams, but you got football fans who aren't necessarily rooting for their team because they're not in it. And you got tons of people who are there just because of celebrity and corporate sponsors and the whole nine yards. It's more than just a game from a fan perspective. But I was at that game. It was very loud for Seahawks on offense, and for Seahawks on defense. More or less on defense. It seemed like a lot of 12s traveled, because if you are a 12 and you've been to a Seahawk game, whether it be home or away, we get loud on defense. We generally get loud in between plays on offense, but we allow our team to operate and function on offense and communicate. That's what I witnessed in February at Super Bowl 60. So it's only going to be more magnified. The banners drop in week one. We play on a Wednesday, which is a little bit unorthodox, but considering the fact that it kicks off the season, it's not necessarily a short week per se. It is shorter for these two teams in comparison to how they prep for the game after preseason is over, and there's like final cuts and all those different things that have to take place. So all that stuff gets expedited by a day or so, because usually the NFL season kicks off on a Thursday. But both teams come in with the same advantage or disadvantage, right? The Patriots don't have more rest than us. We don't have more rest than them. Everybody come in. Let's play that game. I personally believe that that's a dub for the Seahawks. We got home advantage. We've got, 92% of our roster back in the building. Um, I believe it was Brian Nimhauser over at Hawk Blogger who did an episode not too long ago, which highlighted that this Super Bowl team is the Super Bowl team who's bringing back the highest snap count from the previous season, um, even more so than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who pretty much brought back everybody when they won a few years back. Basically, what that means is the snaps that were played with the guys that are in our building, more or less. Um, so I just think that's a dub. There's just too much emotional momentum from last season that'll pour into that first game. So moving on to, and it's a Wednesday night game. I should point that out. Starts at 5:20 as a kickoff. But moving on to week two, we've got the Cardinals, and we go to Arizona to face them. It's a regular schmegular game on Sunday. 125 kickoff. And I've said this already in the episode 4, where we highlighted all three of the NFC West opponents. The Cardinals are not favored in any of their games, as it were, as far as betting odds are concerned. So that should be a dub for us. Not to mention we come out or come into that game with 4 additional days of rest compared to the Cardinals because of that Wednesday game the previous week. The Cardinals play Sunday. So we got 4 days extra rest, and it's not just rest, right? It's preparation, film study. The from a coaching perspective, there's 4 extra days to implement plays and all those things, which bodes well for your team to be able to have that advantage. Moving on to week three is a back-to-back road game. So we go from Arizona to to DC. We're back to face the Commanders. Anyone who remembers, we faced them in DC last year. Um, I believe it was week 9. Week 9. It was a Sunday night game, so it was a prime time game, and it was a blowout, 38-14, with that last 7 being scored by Washington, seemingly in garbage time. So really 38-7, um, and yeah, the highlights are all out there. I was at that game as well. It was really fun. Told any Commanders fan within earshot that they would learn who Torrey Horton was before the end of that game, and I was wrong. They learned who he was by halftime. So I'm not saying that this is a repeat because this is not a Sunday night game. It's actually a Sunday morning game. This is one of two games on our schedule that will start at 10 a.m. Here Pacific Standard Time. Um, so, um, you know, biological clock kind of gets a little shift from a player's perspective, playing in what your body may believe is morning time. But Mike McDonald has a really good track record these first two seasons as the Seahawks head coach with managing East Coast games. So that may or may not even be a factor. Week four. Week four, we're back at home. We face the LA Chargers for a regular kickoff time of 1:25. Um, this will be a matchup with some with some bad blood instincts. Anytime you're talking about Jim Harbaugh, there's always going to be bad blood. Um, when it comes to the Seahawks from his days as the head coach of the 49ers. We know, obviously, Pete Carroll is no longer a part of the team, but when he was our head coach, the rivalry couldn't have been more tense. Not saying that we will carry that on, but the residue will be there. Um, they brought in former Dolphins head coach. Uh, um, Mike McDaniel, excuse me, um, from Miami as their OC, offensive genius, boy genius, if you will. So I expect to see a whole lot more firepower out of Justin Herbert, the second year running back, Omari Hampton. Um, Lad McConkey, like they got some weapons over there, and um, McDaniel will definitely use them. So I don't necessarily see this as the rollover game that the two previous games should be in the Cardinals or in the Commanders. However, I don't see this as a game that the Seahawks lose. So at this count, I believe in 4 weeks we should be 4-0. Moving on to week five, we've got the 49ers. And so this will be our second divisional game in the first 5 weeks, the first true test of our Seahawks, facing a team that easily could be 2-2 heading into this matchup. This is San Francisco that I'm referring to. They could easily be 2-2. Um, Neither team comes off of any rest advantage, um, and the game pretty much writes itself. We know, it's um, Kyle Shanahan and his offense. We've got some usual suspects. They brought back Trent Williams for what that's worth. They've got obviously CMC. They've loaded up on their receivers, having drafted the the rookie was it Shipley, um, signed Mike Evans. So they've obviously retooled um, to compete once again. A lot of people are impressed, shocked, whatever adjective you want to add to the fact that they went 12 wins with the amount of injury that that team sustained. Um, Nothing short of impressive, even if I despise the team. When you lose that many players and lose that many games to injury that they have last year, um, especially the key players, the Fred Warners, the George Kittles, and the list goes on and on. Being without their number one receiver who wasn't injured, just disgruntled. That's their issue. It's an ongoing thing on social media, and hopefully that does not resolve itself. That bodes well for us. But no matter what, when the 49ers and the Seahawks step on the field, it's always a dogfight. So this will be the first true test in week five. Moving on to week six. Oh, sorry, week 5 is a home game, by the way, home game. So we do have the 49ers here. Um, moving on to week 6, we have a very tough road game. Very tough road game is a Thursday night game. So this will be our second of the 7 primetime games. Um, it's at Denver. Literally, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is. Going to Denver to face the Broncos usually bodes trouble for any opponent, especially one that's West Coast based like us in Seattle. It's week 6, so there's no telling. I'm missing the date on what week 6 is, but the weather is a crapshoot, and it's definitely it definitely can be a world of difference compared to the weather we're used to here in Seattle. But irregardless, it's the altitude, right? Everyone talks about it. Mile High, Denver. So getting out there early, would suspect since this previous game, week 5, is a Sunday game. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if the Seahawks, excuse me, the Seahawks fly in to Denver Monday or Tuesday, so that they can start to get adjusted to a little bit of a time zone difference, but more or less the altitude. Um, moving on to week 7, we host the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. So this is back-to-back primetime games, the third of our 7. And we know who is coming back to Lumen Field for the first time as an opponent, K9. So this is a revenge game alert. Obviously, we have a stellar defense when it comes to the running game. I think we're at 23 currently, 23 consecutive games without giving up 100 yards to a rusher. I could be off on the streak, but it's certainly a substantial streak. If that keeps up and I'm right, then we'll go into this game having kept 30 or 29 rushers from reaching that number, and we certainly would want to make that 30 in week 7 with K9. But we all know how explosive he is. We we know firsthand. We were beneficiaries of what was a spectacular playoff run from K9, a spectacular back half of the season between K9 and Charbonnet prior to his injury. So buckle up. Should be a spectacular game. Week 8. This is I guess I should have pointed this out too with the Chiefs. The one thing that we have in our favor is that there's a 3-game advantage, or excuse me, 3-day advantage going into this game. So we have 3 additional rest days compared to the Kansas City Chiefs, um, which should bode well for us. But again, moving on, week 8, we've got the Bears coming into town, and adversely, they have a 3-day rest advantage against us, considering they're coming off of their bye week, if I'm not mistaken. They definitely have 11 days worth of rest, so maybe they're coming off their Thursday night game. Um, but we host the Bears. Chicago will have played 4 playoff teams from last season: the Panthers, the Eagles, um, the Packers, and the Patriots by the time they reach us in week 8. So they will be battle tested. At this point in the season, Seattle will have played 3 playoff teams: the Patriots, 49ers, and Broncos. This is a Monday night game, so obviously on Monday, kicks off at 5:15. Um, so gives us um, literally 7 days of rest since we have a Sunday night, or 8 days of rest, excuse me, since we have a Sunday night game the week prior. Week 9 is a home game against the Cardinals, as I made mention to at the um, top of the kickoff regarding the schedule, because this is the third consecutive game that we host. Um, so this is a home game against the Cardinals. If you remember last year when we faced the Cardinals at home, lightning struck twice. Demarcus Lawrence had two scoop and scores off of Tyrese Knight forced fumbles from Jacoby Brissett, who we presume will be the starter this year. That also is sort of a frenzy within itself that we hope does not resolve itself. But irregardless of who's taking snaps for Arizona, we definitely want to take advantage of the fact that they are not favorites. So should be another good win for the Seahawks. Moving on to week 10. Um, this one should be an easy win. It's a road game in Vegas against the Raiders. We know the Raiders have had little success over the past few seasons, but obviously, when you make change up top, you tend to expect to see that trickle down to results on the field. And they took the best offensive coordinator from last year, in my opinion, off the market by making him head coach for the very first time. Obviously, Clint Kubiak, who won a Super Bowl with us. So this will be another revenge game. Um, I think this is one of the free agent departures, if you will, that impacts the Seahawks the most because of um, how successful Clint Kubiak was last year as an offensive coordinator in comparison to Ryan Grubb the year prior. This will be the third consecutive year that Mike McDonald is running his team with a new offensive coordinator. And Brian Fleury has some, huge shoes to fill. It's just, being completely honest. Now, this isn't me doubting him in any way, shape, or form. These are just the facts. When you have to follow a Super Bowl winning offense, um, you know, the expectation should be high. Um, and what I do expect is that Super Bowl winning offense will improve the Raiders. So even though this should be an easy win for us, I think that it'll be a nice challenge for our defense. Help us sharpen our tools. I'm looking to see. I don't think that this is a game where either team has any advantages from a schedule perspective. I think we both come in with the same amount of rest. Um, but this is a important game because the following week we have a bye week, and you never ever want to go into your bye week on a loss. Um, so it's very important that we get this win in week 10. Um, Skipping week 11, going to week 12, since we know that's our bye week, we get back to it on the road. Um, this is sort of a road game. Technically, it's not a road game since we planted our flag in this stadium last year, but we visit the 49ers at Lumen Field Jr. I think the building still says Levi Stadium, but that's a typo. This is definitely the second Lumen Field. Some people have called it Lumen Field South. I'm reserving that name for another stadium in California. We'll get to that in a second. But something that you should know: Mike McDonald is undefeated after bye weeks. Full stop. Obviously, small sample size. We've only had 2 seasons with him. But Mike McDonald does not lose after a bye week. I think that holds true even in his days as a defensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens. But he does not lose after bye weeks. We don't want to lose, obviously, any game, but certainly not coming off of an extensive rest. We do have a whole week's worth of advantage due to that bye week. We have a 7-day advantage um, for prep. So this should be a really, really fun matchup. I don't want to say easy, Even though the last time we played them, we outscored them in 12 seconds. Um, I don't want to say that it'll be easy, but I think that this will be a really sweet victory should we take care of business in week 12. Going, moving on to week 13. Week 13, we're back at home, and we are facing quite possibly the team that irritates me the second most. Like, I think that the 49ers are the Dallas Cowboys of the NFC West. Now, the Dallas Cowboys of the NFC East in the entire league is the Dallas Cowboys. And that's who we host in week 13. They could be coming into this matchup with 8 wins by this point. They could be 8-5, which for a Cowboys fan means that they're going to the Super Bowl. I kind of want to throw up just saying that. But regardless of the record, this will be a very battle tested team. They will have faced 5 playoff teams at this point. They would have faced Houston, Green Bay, Philly twice, both of their divisional rival games against the Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers. But we've got them on Monday Night Football. So, it'll be a star studded event, and hopefully we win. Weeks 14 and 15, both of these I consider potential trick games. And if you're not familiar with what a trick game means, it's a game that looks like on paper the Seahawks should be favored to win, um, sometimes even heavily favored to win. But we find ourselves in a game that's more competitive than anyone would have anticipated. In week 14, we stay at home against the New York Giants. Now, the New York Giants, the last time they came to Seattle, they beat us with who at the time was their backup running back in Tyrone Tracy. Their starting quarterback at that point was Daniel Jones. And there was no reason why we would believe that we would lose to that team, but we did anyway. And now they come back with obviously new coach in John Harbaugh, new quarterback in Jackson Dart, and we presume Cam Scatterbu will be back from injury by this point, or we should certainly feel confident that 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 he's back. So the the Giants who are going to visit us this season, it's not the Giants of last season. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. This will be the first time John Harbaugh and Mike McDonald face each other as coach since Mike left Baltimore, obviously 2 seasons ago. Um, and the they Giants come into Lumen with an extra day advantage of rest and preparation against us. But everything on the surface looks like a regular Sunday afternoon 1:25 kickoff. So let's keep that in mind. Week 15 is a trick game for a different reason. We go on the road in Philadelphia to face the Eagles on a Saturday afternoon. The game is a kickoff of 2 p.m. I believe that's Eastern time. I could be mistaken, but 2 p.m. And this is the first of those 3 consecutive games that I made mention to where we play off of 6 days worth of rest. Um, Now, what is favorable about that is that the Eagles too are playing off of 6 days worth of rest. So there's no rest advantage for this Week 16 game. Obviously, there's home field advantage for the Eagles. Um, and people have likened the Seahawks and the Eagles as like their Spider-Man meme type of a team. Like they're a bird, we're a bird. They have 2 Super Bowls. Now we have 2 Super Bowls. Um, they have an annoying foe in the Cowboys. We have an annoying foe in the 49ers. Both of those franchises still basks in the glory of winning Super Bowls back in the 90s, like it's still relevant. There's just a lot of parallels between Philadelphia and Seattle. Not too many parallels on what actually transpires on the field. Obviously, they've got Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, who are both ground threats. So our running defense and that QB sneak, they got the tush push and all those other things. So their ground game is really strong. Um, and we gotta make sure that our defensive ends are disciplined. We make sure that middle linebacking core is communicating well and keeping their eyes on Jalen Hurts should he try to spring one. And despite popular belief, he can throw the football. So we've got to keep our eyes peeled with those receivers out there. Devontae Smith, obviously. There will be without AJ Brown. He's someone we'll see in week one. Um, but they've retooled. Who did they didn't they get two? I want to say they got two wide receivers from Green Bay in Romeo Dobbs and Wicks. I could be wrong, but could be a different team that I'm thinking about. But the Eagles, nonetheless, um, will be a very strong opponent against us. What we are thoroughly looking forward to is going up against former Seahawk Reek Woolen. I want to see Sam Darnold wheel and deal with Reek Woolen as the primary defender. That would just make my heart full. But moving on to the matchup that everyone has circled, squared, starred, highlighted on your calendar, regardless whether you are a Seahawks fan or a Rams fan. It doesn't matter. If you are a football fan, you have this marked on your calendar because Christmas comes on Christmas. Doesn't come early. There's a Christmas Day game. The Seahawks will host the Rams. Now the question is still remains personally whether or not there's no question whether or not I'll see the game, but the question still remains whether or not I'll be at this game or not. Still remains to be seen, but nonetheless, this is the matchup the entire league will be talking about throughout the entire season. We'll hear about this game at nauseum from week one until we get to week 16. Irregardless of what happens with these teams' schedules in between then, both teams somehow, some way could end up being 0 and 15, and this team or 14, excuse me, because we each have our bye week. And 0 and 14, everyone's still going to have this circle. The Seahawks will play every day of the week in the season except Tuesday by the time that this game finishes. This is the first in franchise history. This is the third game that we play, or excuse me, is it the second? No, this is the second game that we play off of 6 days worth of rest, but we have a 1 day rest advantage against the Rams, surprisingly. So they've got um, 5 days worth of rest because they'll play on Sunday, the week prior. So this will be one for the ages. Matt Stafford. By week 16, do we know if Stafford's body will even hold up? Will he have encore to his Super Bowl season of last year, or will he have a dud? For some reason, Stafford has an on again, off again type of pattern with his play. He'll have a great season, he'll have a drop off, great season, drop off. He obviously just had a great season, so is this a drop off year for him? Hopefully, but irregardless, we know they've got Puka. We know they've got Miles Garrett, who they traded for, Trent McDuffie, who they traded for, Watson, who they signed. So their back or their secondary is straight. Kyron Williams and Blake Corum is a great 1-2 punch for them in the running game. They gashed us in both games during the regular season last year, and even within that NFC Championship game, um, Kyron Williams and Blake Corum found themselves open, whether it be in the passing game or in the running game, and definitely contributed to the high power offense of the Rams. So let's make sure that we take care of this game because it will be important. And we're getting down to the wire of the season as well. So this is where teams are starting to figure out where they could potentially end up as far as seeding is concerned. If they are on the bubble or in the hunt for a playoff spot, the intensity just it raises for every team. Um, but yeah, let's win, right? Week 17. Now, this is becoming sort of like a prerequisite for our Seahawks schedule because somehow, some way, it feels like every single season we are playing the Carolina Panthers in Carolina, and this is no different in Week 17. If you remember last year, we played the Carolina Panthers later in the season. I think it was maybe Week 17, to be honest with you. Maybe it was Week 15. It slips my mind on where it was within the order, but it was later in the season, and we found ourselves in a game that was tighter than anyone would have anticipated. So again, kind of like a trick game, up until Julian Love got the interception. We were able to capitalize on that and score on that drive and kind of put them away. But there's humidity, there's the East Coast travel, the Carolina Panthers, much like um, an NFC West foe, tend to play the Seahawks very tough. Um, Maybe that is because of the fact that it's at the end of the season and um, like last year, they were fighting for their playoff lives, ended up winning that battle, even though they lost to us, they ended up making it into the playoffs. So this should be, for all intents and purposes, an easy game, but it'll be tougher. Um, the um, the game is a Sunday night, or excuse me, Sunday morning game. So it's the only other game that starts at 10 a.m. Here Pacific Standard Time. But again, Mike McDonald's really good about that East Coast trip. Week 18 to finish the season is Rams Part Two. We will play them in SoFi, and this will be a little bit of deja vu because last year, Week 18, we played San Francisco at San Francisco. And if you're not familiar, this year the Super Bowl will be held at SoFi Stadium. So last year we were in Levi Stadium, Lumenfield Jr. We were in that stadium for Week 18, got the win. That's what secured us the number one seed. So we went into the playoffs with not only a bye week, but an advantage that no other playoff team, including the 49ers, um, who made the postseason despite losing that last game of the regular season, we had an advantage that no other team had, which is we have won in the building the Super Bowl is being held, and we did it most recently. No one can say that. Not even the 49ers. Yeah, they got some home games, but they didn't win as recent as the Seahawks did. So, fast forward to this season, week 18 against the Rams in SoFi Stadium, we have the opportunity to kind of give a prequel to what it feels like to win in that building. Obviously, we'll just switch locker rooms, but let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's win that game. Um, we'll be playing in the stadium that the Super Bowl is being hosted, and that is sweet. Now, week 18 for the entire league is a flex schedule, meaning we don't know necessarily what day of the week we're playing, what time we're playing. Um, which means that this potentially could be a primetime game. Um, but irregardless of the when, we know the where, we know the why. Let's get it done. So that's the entire Seahawks season. This is not my way too early prediction on the season. I'll do that later. But just based on the way the schedule is laid out, I believe our floor, meaning the worst that we could possibly do in the regular season, is 11-6. 11-6 will get us in a wild card spot. No if, ands, or buts about it. We will not. You mathematically cannot miss the playoffs winning 11 games. So we'll make the playoffs, but um, we don't want a wild card. We're spoiled. We want what we had last year, which is the number one seed. We want that first week bye week in the wild card round. Um, and it is very much possible, despite all that is stacked up against us in this season. Um, we have 10 games against playoff teams this year. 10. And there's only one other team that has 10 regular season games against playoff teams from last year. And I can't remember who the other team is, so I'm not even going to guess. But I know we're one of two of those teams. I made mention to it, and I'll make mention to it throughout the season because it's pissing me off. We're the only team in the league with 3 consecutive games on 6 days of rest, which is just criminal. Thankfully, from a day's rest advantage, it's not terrible. It's actually a wash. We have an advantage one game. The opponent has an advantage another game, and then it's a wash another game. So technically, it doesn't necessarily impact in that way, but shorter weeks, higher rate of injury on short weeks. This is why Thursday night games are frowned upon. All these things, right? And it's at the end of the season, which is the worst possible time that anyone could get injured, whether that's significant or insignificant in terms of the injury itself or who it is that gets injured. We don't want to lose anybody as we're making our way towards the postseason. Super Bowl winning teams tend to be the healthiest team going into the playoffs. So we want to make sure that we're healthy. Um, but that's neither here nor there. I'm going a little bit long on that because it's all speculation. I don't think that we're necessarily going to go through the season injury free, but I just certainly don't want any injuries happening towards the end of the year. Anyway, the Seahawks 11-6 is the worst. I'll find time to do sort of like a prediction on the Seahawks season and schedule in terms of wins, losses, and all the things. But until then, make sure you like, share, subscribe on here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter/X, TikTok, all the things. What's Hawkin 12? If you're a 12, share this with 12 friends. They'll share it with 12 friends, and we'll get these followers and subscriptions all the way up. Um, until next time, I'm your boy, Tay P. What's Hawkin, aka TSN. Peace.